Keeping on with this conversation, joining me in studio right now is Pastor John Wesley Nguuh, a governance analyst. And Mr. Nguuh, as you watch this happening, playing out on live television, the two opposing groups, and this stemming from the allegations leveled against KNH of sexual harassment, sexual assault on patients, is this an unearthing of issues, structural issues at KNH, or are these isolated cases that have been blown out of proportion because of social media, for instance?
Well, I would say that is very unfortunate. One, if there is sexual assault for, new mothers, it would be very unfortunate. And I would understand the anger that is coming out from people. And definitely, again, if it is true, I'm talking about if it is true,
right,
then definitely there seems to be a reason why the anger would be there. But beyond that, I think the management of KNH could have invited themselves for this. Because first, the separation of the mothers from their babies, whom they are going to see, especially the incubated babies, and they are going through dark corridors. Definitely, some of these people who are agitating could be having that other extra agenda of saying, I think this is the prime moment. We have been talking about this for too long. We have made our suggestions in the suggestion boxes. Nobody has listened to us. Now we got an opportunity. And maybe it's me who will be there tomorrow. And of course, if they have in any way or the other suffered, then that would be a case to reckon with. The whole thing about there being no CCTV, in the corridors, such that even if these allegations are made, you cannot prove whether they are true or not. But on the other hand, it is very unfortunate that we have not had any credible accusation that has come from any mother. It's only social media that we have had somebody saying, I went, and this is what I heard, and this is what I was told. But the people who are telling them, for one reason or the other, they are not speaking out. And so I would think that whatever we are seeing now could be a frustration of many other things, not this. They are just getting a window of opportunity to vent. Like the way somebody just comes and tells you something, and then you say, wow, what an opportunity for me now. Let me vent out and say what I've always wanted to say about this. And this again comes to management of our institutions, the management of the health sector, because you are hearing that we are almost getting away from the main issue why we came here, but we are now talking about the Kenya National Hospital is being mismanaged. We need the resignation of the CEO. They have gone to the cabinet secretary, and they are saying, there are many other, issues that have to be dealt with. And I think if we are not careful, we may end up having now this turning out to be an issue to do with the health sector. Again, is the health sector being managed the way it should be managed? Right. The whole thing about devolvement of the health sector from the national level to the county level, a bit of the staff are not comfortable with that. And so the staff could also be generating some of the staff, especially the doctors, they may not be in this, but they could actually agitating and say, now that we did our thing for our salaries, but we still are not comfortable about the way this whole thing is being run. So why don't we get people to picket and raise this matter up?
You raised a very important issue in terms of some of the allegations being made not being officially lodged with the police. For instance, we heard from the KNH CEO saying they have not received any complaints from patients. But on the other side of that argument, you have people saying that as a sexual harassment or sexual assault victim, many don't come forward for being victimized or being castigated or not believed. Were still for a lot of what has happened to them. So what do you make of that? Because that could be the reason as to why several women have not come out officially, not knowing what kind of backlash they would get.
I would say I'm a bit hesitant to say that they cannot talk. Sexual harassment and sexual assault is something that with this kind of, like you remember what happened in the US, many people have been harassed by presidents and by who But when an opportunity comes as this kind of opportunity, I believe you don't just go to the press conference and say, I'm the one they are talking about. There are mechanisms where even the press, when you go to the press, I see the press trying to cover somebody's face, and then you say, yes, as they are saying this, I am a victim of that. And another one comes, I'm a victim of that. You can actually be able to go to report and say, I was harassed, but I want my name not to be, and it can be investigated. But when it is that you have talked to somebody else, and that somebody else is the one who has come up, and they have said it, a bit of that, now you can see the embodiment of the staff of KNH coming up saying, oh, you know, they are being told Melipo, and then they are saying Atuja Lipo. You know what I mean? It's like, come up with evidence. Tell us who. What happened? And so I think we need to be careful, even as we start doing the whole thing about picketing, that sometimes we need to have credible issues that we are raising, because if we don't, then at the end of the day, just in case this matter was investigated and it is proved that nothing like that happened, we lose credibility, you know? And I think we should be directing this not to KNH as of now, not to the ministry, but to the investigating agencies. Those are the ones who should be telling, we need credible information. And we have so and so, and so and so, and so and so you need to talk to, you know, that we can be able to establish the truth about this. But now you're going to the accused person and you're saying, you know, ABCD. Now, how do we get that? Of course, I'm hearing that it is not possible when the CEO is in office for you to do credible investigation. But by the time you are coming to say that this is happening, you should have gotten some base, you know, of being able to make the allegation. Right,
and just to clarify, you're not insinuating that some of these women who've come forward, at least maybe on social media, but hidden their identities, they're not fabricating or making up any of these stories for political reasons?
Well, I did not want to bring politics here, but now that you have brought it, you never know. I would say you never know. And you see, when you live as a nation, like for instance, you have not had picketing for some time, and people are still, we have not still left the season of we are not happy with the government, we are not this. Now, you may not come directly to do that, but if you come and give an opportunity, you know, an opportunity is created. I've studied many places where there's been revolutions, and you realize a revolution is sparked by somebody being marked. And then you come and say, that person should not have been marked. And then you come 20 of you, and then you come and say, by the way, the marking was supported by the police. So the police must go. And then the police are employed by the government. So it is possible that we could have all those possible scenarios in the background. But as I've said, if that thing has happened, it is the most unfortunate thing, and something needs to be done. Something
definitely needs to be done. And the hope is, you know, KNH is able to engage this situation and these allegations properly, because right now it seems that it can get lost in the noise.
Yes,
you have on one side of the KNH staff who are protesting against, and of course the human rights groups, but looking at KNH now and how they've handled this issue, the methods of engagement in terms of the people who are coming up against them, do you think this is wise? Because you have your staff who are equally trying to outshout the ones who've come to you know, call them out for these allegations against the hospital. But do you feel this is the wisest way to deal with it from the hospital standpoint? Because we expected backlash from the public. We expected this to happen.
Well, I think the hospital, in my understanding, when the members of parliament were there, they were allowed to go and investigate, and, you know, look around and see what was happening. The CEO addressed them. I would expect that these bodies, if they have what they are protesting about, maybe if they think that the hospital has hidden 1 or 2, 3 things, they should be able to make their presentations to the people involved. And I would expect the hospital also to open doors, not to everybody to go and bring mayhem. I mean, noise should not be there in the hospital in the first place. That's one thing I know. You don't allow people to come and picket and shout where there are patients. But I would expect that the leaders of these people would be allowed to present their case. And then they discuss. I know advocacy. I mean, I'm one person who has been involved in advocacy and training about advocacy. You make the pressure, you know, make the pressure in the streets and everything else, but then allow the people who are protesting to come with their position. their position paper.
Which right now we're not seeing because you have the staff who've created a buffer zone, if you will.
And that's why I'm saying now the hospital should be able to allow the few, not everybody, to rush into Kenyatta National Hospital. God forbid that. Because if people are aggravated and then they start throwing, I mean, we'll be hurting now more of the patients whom they are trying to protect, you know. But I would expect that the hospital management would allow, you know, the people who are the leaders there to go and soberly present what they have to present and maybe even address the press from there, but not allow this now pressure to build, and then we end up finding that there's destruction of property or human life in the process.
In your view, generally, what does this mean for the hospital? Because this is not the first time that allegations, well, not as serious as sexual harassment, have come up against KNH, but generally the state of health services, or lack thereof, at the, and it's the largest referral hospital in the region, but what does this mean for KNH now moving forward? Because it's not just management, there's also structural issues there.
Well, I would say that that's why I'm saying, and I started with this, Victoria, that there are other issues that are causing this to happen. And it's more of the management issues, the governance of the hospital, the structures, as you're saying, the systems, how they're addressing the issues. I've been a victim, you know, when we went there sometimes back to have a relative being treated, and the person was in critical condition, and we stayed for about 6 hours. I mean, 6 hours, 7 hours, and we are being taken slowly from here to here, and then, you know, the issues. And then I just wondered, who is managing this, you know? Why wouldn't we have a seamless kind of, you know, things that if somebody has come in a critical condition, you are taken from one point A to point B, to point C, to point D. And you realize, of course, everything rises and falls with the leadership and the governance. And so when you see this, it is the underlying factors. And I'm just saying, it is not just this issue. This issue may not be the issue. It may be the issue that has given opportunity for people who are coming. Because again, the PR management about this event, I mean the public relations, just public relations management has not been very good. It's like everything now is being left to the CEO to handle. Now you suspect there's a problem here. Because the people who are in public relations should have come, not just make the announcement, but even take what is being done and responded. But now it's like the only person who we are seeing or hearing is a CEO. So you start noticing that, and you know the board, we have not had the board meeting to handle, you know, the crisis. Or, to me, it's a crisis. But to them, maybe it's not a crisis. So those are leadership issues that we are facing, not just in this institution, but in the institutions in our country today.
Absolutely, and we were expecting a report from at least the Ministry of Health in conjunction with KNH on some of the allegations made. That was supposed to be submitted yesterday. We have not heard from either of the bodies in terms of what they have found. And again, this whole looming story as to many of the allegations not being put up with the police or the hospital, making it very difficult when it comes to investigations, even from the police side. Let's cross back over to Kenyatta National Hospital to see what the human rights groups are demanding now. Let's listen in.
Anonymously, with protection, to come and share their grievances. We want it to be a public thing. We want real recommendations because we will come back. We want to come back and check if all the things we put on paper have been implemented. We don't want to be face washed. We don't want tweet words. And we don't want their PR. Yes. We don't want to see them talk. We want to see them work. Yes. We want to come back when there's some action. Yes. We don't want to see all these leaders trooping in here for catwalks. Just for what? PR. Don't want, we've had enough. It's been a long time coming. We've had so much of that. So today, brothers and sisters, I ask you, once again, we are watching all this together. And again, we will be back, won't we? Yes. We shall be back. Yes. We shall be back. Yes. We come in peace. Back again. Yes. Because this is our right.
All right, human rights groups there at KNH saying they will not relent Of course, until they have their grievances addressed, they said they do not want to hear any PR, in quotes, from the hospital. Let's head back there. I understand the signal has stabilized a bit to listen into what they have to say. Okay, unfortunately, technology is failing us today with the happenings at KNH. And again, Mr. Nguuh, in terms of what these human rights activists are saying is we don't want PR. A lot of times when allegations have been brought up against KNH or any government body for that matter, they'll say we begin a commission of inquiry, we'll look into the allegations, but nothing concrete is really done in terms of response. And that has been the worry, and not of course on their part, but from the public as well, who have to interact with these services on a daily basis.
Yeah, you see, the way you manage, if you are serious about management, if a complaint is made, you receive it. And then, from your own viewpoint, you do some timelines and very key performance indicators on your part. That by tomorrow morning, like what you said, they said by this evening, right, we will do this. By tomorrow morning, we will have done this. And then you keep your word. I mean, the part I've liked about them is I said, okay, we are not picketing here the whole day. We are gone. But we'll be back. And we don't want just to be addressed. We want action. Now, that's where I'm saying from the PR perspective, if they are the ones who had put that for themselves. You know, if you come and make a complaint, you also are obviously know that it may not be done immediately. But you expect somebody who is serious enough in management to tell you, okay, what you're demanding, we may not be able to give you in the next 2 hours, but in the next 6 hours, you're going to do this. Something smart. You just set your own objectives. Something that is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And then you say, by next week, we will have done this. Like, for instance, if they came and said, it's a solid state of affairs, we apologize that there is no CCTV cameras, we are trying to see how we can be able to change the mothers to come closer to their babies. You know, I mean, you ease the tension. And then the people now expect that you're going to fulfill what you have discussed and you have promised what you are able to do. But if you just come and say, we never did it, it is, you know, we will investigate, we'll come back to you as of when we want to do, or you tell them we will come back, you don't come back. Then what do you expect?
You mentioned earlier the whole issue of health services, of course, now being devolved to the counties, initially being in the hands of the national government. Has that helped? Because we've been seeing wrangles, especially when it comes to pay and remuneration for health workers, the doctors' strike, nurses' strike that took months on end to settle. But in your view, what would remedy this issue? Is it stemming also from management in terms of if it's in the counties or the national government? And there's been that debate on where do health services stand best to be delivered?
Well, I think it's the whole thing about the Agenda 4. You know, the whole issue about transition from the national to the county governments. Because I'll tell you, Victoria, I've been at the counties. I was in Uasin Gishu recently, before I came back to Nairobi. And it's such a blessing to have gone to the county, especially in the issue about drugs availability. Drugs are available to the village, you know, incidentally, because the county government must prove that they are bringing the health services closer to the people. They are bringing, you know, the staff. So on one hand, the Mwananchi, you know, the Wajiko, is getting benefited by this devolution. I think the whole issue is about the staff. Again, you'd understand that the devolvement of the staff brings problems because you don't expect that the counties have evolved to the point of, you know, growth and maturity that they are able to handle. And so you realize that if they are left on their own, some people in one county will be getting better services than the other people in the other county. So the staff have been saying, why don't we allow the staff factor to be handled at the national level so that we can be able to, number one, be able to come together as, you know, put pressure as a team. Because once we are divided and you're only picketing in your own country, they'll be able to say, well, let the officials at that country deal with the government in that country. And so I think that is where the issue has been. But as the devolvement of the health services has been a blessing, I can assure you, in many countries, the whole issue about the establishment of the level 5 hospitals, you know, around the country, getting machines and services closer to the people, getting people, like in my home county in Embu, you can get the services, even the screening and, you know, the issues about the initial treatment and, you know, of major diseases at the county level. Now, that is it. But the staffing element, I think there needs to be more discussions about that.
Okay. On that note, we're crossing into the 12 o'clock hour here on NTV today. The conversation continues. Of course, I still at KNH as the human rights groups seek audience with KNH management. We'll be right back. We're taking a short break. Let's head over to KNH, where Seth Olari is standing by. Still, the human rights groups agitating for audience with the management there. But Seth is actually inside the hospital grounds. He was speaking to the KNH Union Committee Chair about what's been happening there. What more do we know at this hour, Seth, that you can tell us?
Thank you so much, Vicky. Actually, what is happening right now is another meeting that has been called by officials or leaders of the Kenyatta National Hospital Workers Union, who are now addressing other staff. Remember that this is just in regard to what they're denying claims of sexual assault that is being alleged against them. We also had representatives of the mortuary wing who were the main highlights being accused of rape. And this is just a meeting that started like 2 hours ago, and there was a confrontation here at the gate of the main hospital after the group being led by human rights groups and also women welfare organizations attempted to get access of the hospital, but the staff here were keen to ensure that that will not happen, and luckily the gate was closed because it was seemingly going to be a very violent confrontation because the workers here had vowed to take the human rights groups head on should they access the facility. But what's interesting, or what's major concern here, Vicky, is that what happens to the services here, because the people you're seeing here, these are the staff of the hospital. So what's happening inside the hospital? Obviously, operations have been paralyzed, and that is a very major concern. And maybe we just have one of the people, or rather people who've come to access services here. Kwa majina yenu mnaitwa nani? Mmekuja hapa kupata matibabu?
Ndio.
Hebu tueleze tu kufikia sasa mmehudumiwa?
Mtu wetu alikuwa analala kwa hospitali. Kwa kitanda.
Lakini bado mnasubiri?
Ndio.
Is this one of the people who've come here to at least get medical services, but that will have to wait a little bit longer because we have series of meetings by workers and their leaders. That is the Kenyatta National Hospital Workers Union, who are still discussing these issues of allegations against them, Vicky.
All right, thanks for that update, Seth. And of course, we'll see how this plays out, not just today, but in the course of this week. This is certainly not dying down anytime soon. A correction, Alfred Keter, the Nandi Hills MP, who was the Labour Committee Chair, was forcefully removed by members of that committee. He did not step down. Apologies for that miscommunication. Continuing on with our conversation, still with me in studio is John Wesley Nguuh, a governance analyst. And we had run a story earlier talking about the issue of insecurity here in Nairobi. We have security forces blaming it on various factors, from hawkers to boda bodas to street families. But this points to a deeper issue, more of governance that we have kind of seen a lack of when it comes to managing the affairs of Nairobi County and Nairobi City as the capital of Kenya. But Mr. Nguuh, let me just engage you on that in terms of the recent cases we've seen of insecurity in the CBD. Is this playing out because of isolated cases that we're just seeing now and they've been blown out of proportion maybe on social media, or is this a systemic issue when it comes to dealing with affairs here in Nairobi?
What I think is very difficult, I may not have the facts in my fingertips because I've not done this. Of course, in this era of social media, you would expect that a very small thing would be blown. It can be blown. I'm not saying this one is being blown. It can be blown. But because, of course, muggings have been there in the city. But in this particular case, I think it's not just a matter of blowing up. There are things that are happening because it has been reported again and again, and especially when it is a gang, you know, a gang of 10 or so, just zeroing in on one, like what we are seeing here. you know, organized things. And I would want to say, I think there are two other factors that are not being mentioned that I think are very critical. And the first one is the issue about the lack of surveillance. And especially, we have these wonderful gadgets called the CCTV cameras. I really wonder whether we manage them the way it should be managed. Because you'd expect that if in a building, let's just say it's in a building, Nation TV Center, you'd expect that if somebody is seen on CCTV, there's somebody somewhere who is watching all those movements. The equipment is not left on its own, such that you are able to call to attention, there's a guy in second floor that needs to be checked. Right. Now, I really wonder whether our CCTV cameras in this city work like that. Because you hear that we are coming the next day or the following day or 2 days after, or when a matter is reported, is when we are going back to the CCTV cameras. Is there a central room where we have competent officers who are noticing what is happening in the streets and alerting the security forces to be able to attend to that? I don't think there is. Right. I don't think there is. But on the other one is the macro level issue about employment, you know, and employment of our young people. Again, you know, you'll be surprised that when in Nairobi City, for instance, you call for a picketing meeting, you get 1 million people just at a go. That means we are actually idle people in the city. We are not doing something very serious. We are just looking for something to be done. And I think those are issues that need to be addressed as we handle this matter. But coming to what you're asking, yes, governance issues have a problem. I mean, they are contributing so much to this. The first thing is populism, you know, where you promise people, you vote for me, then I will do this for you. And one of the things that I realized our governor may have promised is that the hawkers would be given a free hand to be able to do what they want to do because they are the major voters. You know, there's a school of thought that the middle level of guys just tweet and do other things, but they don't actually go voting. So the actual guys who go voting are these hawkers and people out there. And so to please them, you allow them to do that. Because it's not that they cannot be removed. They can't be removed from the streets. But you allow them. But then when you allow them, when they get overcrowded, in the first place, they don't get even those buyers. And then you overcrowd the streets. How do you manage the security at that particular point? So I think we have to get to a point of now not just doing politics, but actually managing the city. Right. And one of the things that we have to do is we have to clear the streets. And when we are clearing the streets, let's have designated places. And we had started doing that. I don't know why we are getting back to that. And the level of crimes like this had gone down. But when you have crowded streets, without, you know, I mean, there are more people, you know, juggling around and everything, you give room for such kind of things to happen. And of course, it's very unfortunate that we are seeing the element of the deputy governor and the governor, you know. So if you see it at the top there, then how much is happening in the fire and ranks of the other officials? Are we waiting for one person to give directions, or are we actually saying we have a strategic plan for the city and we are doing ABCD even for the hawkers? And security cannot be managed in crowds like that. And I think that's a basic thing that needs to be handled on issues to do with what are we doing concerning clearing the streets and even these hawkers in the first place. And I'm not against the hawkers selling, by the way. But they also overcrowd the streets to the point that if I want to buy a shirt in a particular place in the streets because of these hawkers and because of the overcrowding, I will not do that. So I will withdraw to a mall outside the city center. So even the traders, the people who we have given room to do business in town, they are being affected.
Adversely affected, absolutely. Yes. You mentioned, of course, now with the wrangles that played out in the resignation of the Deputy Governor of Nairobi, and many asking, what does this mean moving forward in terms of governance of Nairobi? And then the debate arises in terms of the current governance structure that we have for Nairobi County. It is the administrative, the financial capital of Kenya. And many asking, is there need to restructure it? As it stands, does it work? Do we need maybe another metropolitan body to help with the management of Nairobi as the capital? Because it is a very unique setup and structure in terms of, you know, being a city and a county as well.
You are right. Why you have heard, and it is true, I believe it is true, why you have heard that State House is interested If one county, from one county, you're getting 60% of your GDP being generated, you would be crazy not to be involved. You would be crazy not, because you are generating 60% of what, you know, is coming to the economy. And therefore, you find now the heart of State House is seen looming. And when you hear now that the governor is feeling uncomfortable that the state is, you know, getting in, I would expect that if I was the president and I was the minister for finance, and, you know, I would not allow all this, you know, to just be managed when I'm not calling the shots. And how do I call the shots? Because the county government must run. I must find a way of creeping in and have my business done. And so I think we need to rethink about the city of Nairobi, the offering of the services and the income generated at the same time. And is that 60% of the GDP solely supposed to be under the one county, so that at least the county now has to give to the central government? Or are we supposed to have an agency managing, you know, a bigger area, and then calculated in a way that the services are being offered by a local authority, you know, like a county government, right, but at the same time, and having calculated that, but at the same time, the management of the city, where we are generating most of our funds, is being done by a more corporate body. It's not just one governor, right, controlling 60% of our GDP, but we are having a corporate body that we have designed in the law that is managing that for us, but at the same time, there's a county government that is handling the services of the people of Nairobi.
We ran a feature over the weekend called Cartel Hall, and it was basically looking at how cartels in Nairobi have run down the city and how it's operated over time. We have so many cartels: land cartels, water cartels, transport cartels, parking cartels. I mean, different hands trying to get a part and a piece of Nairobi, as you're mentioning earlier. But how do we deal with this issue before we can get to the point of creating maybe a body to deal with the corporate side of the county or the capital city? When it comes to inefficiencies of provision of services, corruption, ghost workers, these are things that have been with us for decades when it comes to managing Nairobi. How do we remedy a lot of these issues, at least in the short term, before you can look into legislation to deal with it in the long term?
Well, I think leadership, according to John Maxwell, exists to solve problems. And so we expect that leadership will emerge at this particular point, where we actually come and say, we have a problem, and we state the problem. And we don't remain at the problem. We have a short look at the problem. Somebody else said, when Hughes has said, that when you have a problem, you don't spend all your time looking at the problem. Like in the Bible, we hear about, you know, the giants. And there was these spies who had gone to the land. 10 of them took enough time to just compare themselves vis-a-vis the giants. And when they came back, they had given up. They had just said, in their eyes, we were looking like grasshoppers. I don't know how they were able to, you know, to get that. But we were also like grasshoppers. I think the thing is, we take so much time to look at the cartels and investigate what cartels, but we need a management, the governance of the city of Nairobi to come down and deal, you know, identify what problems we have, and then get a way out. And one of the ways out is to say, how are we going to, you know, and we were so hopeful. Let me tell you, we were so hopeful recently when the governor came and said, we are stopping these issues about parking, and we have been able to generate this amount of money. You know, I mean, we just said, yeah, a new broom has come. I think it's just a matter of commitment to deal with every issue, using management principles that I believe the deputy governor was bringing to the city. Whether we like it or not, this city will not be run in by just politics and politicking. We need good managers. Actually, many people, and I would want to say this to our Excellency the Governor, many people gave him the vote because they thought finally we are going to get the political angle being handled, but we are going to get a manager who is going to sit down and tell us, this is the problem we have, this is how we are going to deal with it administratively. Put the structures in place, like what they were doing about the collection. Let me use that again. In the collection of the taxes. And then, when we had that, then we say, in this transport crisis, this is our short-term plan, this is our long-term plan. Governor Sonko had even told us that, you know, we are going to see very soon, we will remove, because of the jam.
The PSVs from the CBD?
Yes,
yes,
they are going to be removed, they are back. We are going to have the rubble strips and, you know, whatever, removed from the superhighway. We are going to get footbridges. We have not seen any construction taking place so far.
Right.
And so that's the element of identifying every issue and having a strategic plan for every issue and making commitments, like what we are saying about Kenyatta National Hospital. Tell us we are in this struggle. In 6 months' time, in this area, we have done this.
Right.
And address it publicly. Let the people know that they are together with you. Let me tell you, Kenyans can support you when you are out to manage their things. Michuki rules, when they came up,
yeah,
I walked personally in this city because I knew somebody is coming to sort out the problem.
Right.
Yes.
And we're seeing a lot of those changes taking effect and yielding fruit even now once he's long gone. Thank you so much, Mr. Nguuh. This is all the time that we have. A governance analyst looking at the case of Nairobi and what we can do to improve the situation here in the capital city and the county by and large.